Some women never seem to shed the skin of youth. Their minds linger in a perpetual adolescence, sparkling, airy, unpredictable, yet easily wounded. Maybe you've caught glimpses of this in others, or noticed it in stray reflections of yourself. These are the women who move through life as though the main event always lies somewhere ahead, a debut delayed forever. They drift between adventures, never anchoring, passionate for brief moments, but never grounded. Grand schemes are dreamed. Never will lieutenant there's laughter in their eyes, concealing a hidden sorrow, the dread of growing older. This is the shape of the Puella Eterna, Jung's shadow for the feminine, the eternal girl unable to step into adulthood. Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's companion in thought, dissected this elusive pattern, exposing its unsettling truths. Trapped between worlds, the Puella dances on the surface of life, terrified of the heaviness beneath. She resists the slow tide of time, refusing to accept the crossing into grown reality. Her radiance and wit mask a deep aversion, the pain of loss, the finality of choices, the ache of leaving behind impossible dreams. Rather than commit to paths or people, she floats between open doors, always hoping, never arriving. She clings to visions of flawless love, but intimacy sends her fleeing. Freedom haunts her. But the idea of true independence, with all its solitude, is even more frightening. So she hovers in that twilight, fueled by possibility, haunted by unfinished promises, unable or unwilling to land. Maybe you're beginning to sense that this isn't some abstract idea, but a chilling reality, one that quietly shapes the existence of countless women admired by others, yet haunted by a shapeless sense of disorientation. Women whose intelligence is a silent witness to recursive mistakes they cannot seem to escape. Their lives are a graveyard of fresh starts, forever missing the thread that would tie it all together. There's a hollow ache that claws at them, an emptiness without origin. Emma Jung, when she contemplated the feminine psyche, named the animus, the inner masculine, as the missing piece, the structure that anchors identity and connection to the world. But the eternal maiden rejects this. She recoils from boundaries. She craves flight. This longing for sky is what sends her plummeting into darkness. Tonight, I'll guide you through the shadowy corners where this archetype hides, where so-called freedom masks a suffocation, where potential is stunted, and the specters of lost selves linger just out of sight. And, more unsettling, I will show you ways to claw your way out of this labyrinth. But consider yourself warned. There is no comfort here, only a mirror. If you're brave enough to gaze into it until the end, you might see that the maiden who clings to the promise of endless beginnings is only forestalling her own coronation. The eternal girl, the Puella, isn't just a phase or a harmless quirk. She is an ancient, hungry presence in the depths of the feminine unconscious. And she feeds on delay, denial, and dreams never claimed. Jung saw in her a reflection of the Puella Eternus, the eternal youth unable to grow up, endlessly resisting commitment, and drifting apart from reality. Marie-Louise von Franz cast an even more somber light on this figure. To her, the Puella Eterna is a woman whose inner life is suspended in a dreamlike, fruitless youth, which quietly stifles her own development and dulls her potential for true fulfillment. She inhabits the realm of almost. She almost loves, almost creates, almost gives herself. She clings to the notion that freedom is found in never settling down, not realizing she's simply escaping her own depths. At the core, she shuns the boundaries that shape genuine living. Routine unnerves her. Predictability and stability feel suffocating. The tangible world is a silent menace, threatening the fragile magic of possibility. She needs to feel secure, a brittle sanctuary where nothing is ever solid enough to risk loss. Von Franz's observations draw out the sadness of a pattern. The poor is so captivated by the idea of herself as wild and unbound that the prospect of actual commitment becomes unbearable. In the chase for perpetual potential, everything meaningful slips quietly out of reach. Passion stays unthreatening as long as it doesn't turn intimate. The project keeps its vitality as long as it hovers in theory. Life feels weightless as long as it's only imagined and not actually lived. And perhaps the most bitter irony is that she is so frequently admired. To others, she appears radiant, bursting with creativity and spontaneity. And maybe she is, but it's all on the surface. Out of sight, quietly and relentlessly, an emptiness grows behind all this restless motion. The poor is always moving, too caught up in the chase to notice she's just circling the same ground. She is a wanderer with nowhere to go. Where does all this hesitance to mature begin? Why is this path so easy to find for so many women now? Here lies the heart of it. The poor doesn't come out of nowhere. She's shaped by a society that lifts up youth and dismisses growing older, a world that teaches women to measure their worth by desire, never depth, to see femininity as something light, never commanding. And under the surface, the eternal girl is often a silent answer to pain that never healed, wounds from long ago that harden into resistance against growing up. So the hurting woman crafts an enchanting mask to get by, a mask that, after a while, feels like a cage. The poor archetype becomes both a sign of suffering and the means of defending herself from it. Emma Jung, in Animus and Anima, observes that when a woman avoids addressing the hidden currents of her own unconscious, she often becomes overtaken by them. Her conscious self, then, remains delicate and unsettled, easily swayed by the deep forces moving beneath the surface. The eternal maiden isn't steering her own life. Instead, she's swept along by a silent image she doesn't even recognize as her own. Maybe this explains it: the persistent unease, the cycles that repeat themselves, the empty sense that wholeness is always just out of reach, even when things seem perfect on the outside. This is the shadow of the poor energy. She clings to illusions, unwilling to let you grow, because growing up means letting go of comforting fantasies. And those are the most cherished treasures of the soul's inner world. So the question lingers painfully: if this is the figure ruling so many lives, what has become of the fuller, deeper side of the feminine? Where is the way towards something more genuine, something more complete? This is what we now turn toward, searching for that part within you, the sleeping queen, long overlooked. Perhaps she too aches to awaken, if the meaning here is surfacing for you. Somewhere deep beneath the ordinary pulse of understanding, press the subscribe button and let yourself follow this channel's unfurling shadows. Your support pulls you closer. Beneath the veneer of every woman, psychic forces coil and writhe, swelling in the dark well beyond conscious intent. Jung called these powers archetypes, ancient, universal phantoms that twist through our most secret moments. In the labyrinth of the feminine psyche, two archetypes rise in relentless opposition: the maiden and the great mother. It's within the tension of these shadowy figures that so many women find themselves snared in the mirage of forever youth, unable to escape even as the world around them withers and change gnaws at the door. The maiden burns bright, innocence, allure, the fragile blush before corruption. She is promise incarnate, the sweet scent of something that never quite arrives, the spellbinding hope hovering at the edge of dream. In youth, she commands with a kind of holy fire, the urge to plunge into the unknown, to hunger, to transgress. But let that promise linger too long, and the brilliance curdles. When the maiden's ghost will not surrender her reign, the psyche begins to splinter. She bars the gates against maturity, keeping a woman suspended, a lost thing circling the chimera of what might be, never what is. She becomes her own haunting, a shadow self condemned to drift in the realm of in-betweens, always nearly knowing, nearly giving in, but forever denied the balm of becoming whole. That sense of almost can become a black hole, a swirling emotional void that drains us of vitality, direction, and significance. Marie-Louise von Franz observes that a maiden who resists symbolic death cannot be reborn as a complete woman. This isn't about literal death, but about letting go of the childlike ego, the part that clings to fantasies, craves rescue, and recoils from life's gravity. Undergoing this inner death is undeniably hard. Yet through it alone can the Great Mother, the figure of maturity, nurture, and deep wisdom, emerge. The Great Mother isn't a domesticated caretaker who loses herself in serving others. She's the sovereign of her inner landscape. She nourishes, sustains, transforms, and commands. Unlike the maiden who waits to be noticed, the Great Mother does the choosing. Unlike the maiden who needs admiration, the Great Mother commands respect. She isn't concerned with charm because she's complete. Rooted and wise, she knows what to give, how to protect, and when to step back. A woman embodying this archetype doesn't look for approval to exist. She exists, rooted, profound, and purposeful. Reaching this stage means sacrifice. The maiden has to relinquish her old self for the queen to arise. This is a transition that the poor Eternus resists. She clings tightly to fading reflections of youth, to dreams of a perfect love, and to the fragile notion that time can somehow be held at bay. Yet time moves on, indifferent. And when a woman turns away from the path of maturity, something within her begins to fade. What was once the luminous promise of the maiden slowly transforms into a glimmering but confining cage. Emma Jung, when contemplating a woman's journey toward wholeness, notes that fulfillment comes only when she embraces not just the enticing self she presents to the world, but also the hidden wellspring of creativity, destruction, and renewal inside. For the woman stuck within the maiden's realm, something vital remains missing. She is left incomplete, and as long as she remains divided, dependence and uncertainty shadow her steps. Do you sense, beneath the surface, a force that is deeper, stronger, and more authentic waiting to emerge? You are not mistaken. That presence is your inner queen, longing to leave behind the endless flight, and at last take her throne. But first, there must be a reckoning and unflinching look at the ways the maiden self holds her back, sabotaging love, ambition, and every meaningful choice. If you fail to recognize where the eternal girl is at work, she quietly remains in control, hidden in the background of your life. That's what we'll look at now, where the Puella asserts herself, the ways she undermines situations, and what she's desperately trying to escape. There's an undeniable allure about her. The Puella captivates with an almost enchanting presence. She's imaginative, impulsive, unpredictable, always swept up in new passions, teeming with ideas and dreams that flicker and vanish just as quickly. Yet, this vitality slips through her fingers because it can't bear the weight of reality. She is dazzling for a moment, then gone, unable to remain, unwilling to carry anything to term. Her greatest longing is to feel, to live in the dream, but never to endure or to stay. This pattern leaves devastation in her relationships. She aches for love, but pulls away from the binding thread of commitment. The Puella seeks the perfect lover, that mythical unity, an ideal beyond reach. As soon as the other steps out from behind the curtain of perfection, showing their ordinary flaws and humanity, she recoils. She insists it's not how it once was, that something precious has faded away. But there was no magic to lose. It was only ever a reflection of her own longing. She bestowed onto the other what she hasn't been able to build within herself, a sense of stability, depth, and structure. Marie-Louise von Franz, in The Problem of the Puer Aeternus, wrote of this woman, shaped by the Puella archetype, always searching for a rescuer, someone to pull her from her internal disarray and give her life meaning. The sadness in this search is palpable, an endless yearning fueled by an absence that no one can really fill. But when he enters her life, she demands so much from him that it's like swallowing light. No one survives the pull. Inevitably, the tension snaps, and she recoils to her pattern of worship, an abrupt exile. This cold, predictable pendulum belongs to the Puella. She's hungry for transcendence in every encounter, yet recoils from the weight of attachment, because every bond is a slow-cut sacrifice, confrontation, disappointment. She backs away from the blood and grime of forging real connection. Her career collapses in the same haunted rhythm. The Puella is always restless, searching for a place that echoes her strange pulse. A quest for meaning that's never satisfied. Routine and effort feel like shackles. She rushes into new projects with a feverish hope, then abandons them as soon as monotony gnaws at her spirit. She changes direction, job, discipline, life. Convinced that she's just one step from uncovering her real destiny, she claims rigor and authenticity, but more often, she's just running from the quiet, inescapable suffering that any genuine path demands. Emma Yoon, in Animus and Anima, describes such women as being shadowed by an undeveloped animus, the logic and order of the unconscious kept in childish chains. What emerges is a hollow thrum of grand proclamations, great ambition without substance, a voice leaking through corridors but never taking form. She speaks extravagantly of her talents and vision, painting herself as a rare orchid. Yet nothing roots, nothing lasts. The machinery of thought still stuck in its infancy, dreaming of kingdoms but building only ghosts. A woman under the influence of the Puella archetype often speaks at length about herself, her talents, and her distinct perspective, yet struggles to anchor these qualities in anything real since she hasn't yet faced or integrated her animus. Her words can be alluring, but lacking in substance, leaving her feeling unmoored. Decisions remain unmade, or, more precisely, she avoids making them. The Puella fears committing to a path, as every choice means giving up other options, closing doors, and leaving certain aspects of herself behind, something she finds almost intolerable. As a result, she lives in a perpetual state of uncertainty. Maybe she wants this, maybe she'll do that, maybe she'll return or change once again. These endless maybes trap her in a kind of limbo, where nothing takes root or grows, since nothing is truly sown. What she has yet to realize is that growing up doesn't mean surrendering freedom, it means claiming it. True freedom isn't about constant escape, but about the capacity to remain, to create, to nourish, and uphold one's own life with self-respect. Beneath all this wavering, however, lies something deeper, a pain, a psychic injury, an inner emptiness that the Puella tries to disguise with new activities, love affairs, or ideas. This hidden ache needs to be brought into the light, since the Puella is not just a set of behaviors, but reflects a deeper story. She represents a deeper issue, a soul that feels isolated, adrift, and afraid to accept her full self. In what follows, we'll explore the shadow side of the eternal girl, and bring to light the hidden pain she masks with her captivating presence. The Puella Eterna is enchanting. Her lightness, spontaneity, and nearly otherworldly energy of perpetual youth brighten every space she enters. She gives off a sweetness, a gentleness, a sensitivity, but also a profound restlessness. There's a blend of anticipation and emptiness in her eyes, hinting at a pain that goes unseen by others, a pain she often can't even articulate herself. This woman's life revolves around a fantasy that if she is just good enough, beautiful enough, and lovable enough, she will be cherished, protected, and guided by someone strong. She dreams there's a prince out there who will arrive and place her where she can finally experience her own happy ending. She doesn't openly admit this, but her patterns give her away: ongoing passivity, indecisiveness, a desperate need to please, a crippling fear of disappointing others, and a nearly unquenchable hunger for validation. The Puella is the woman who speaks with tenderness, who is reluctant to act or decide on her own, preferring to let others take the lead, hoping to be shown the way, to be wanted, and to be rescued. When the so-called savior arrives, an ordinary man with his own imperfections and contradictions, her disappointment is sharp, a letdown that echoes the chasm between fantasy and real life. She has placed all her hopes for resolution on him, and his inability to fill her longing feels like a personal betrayal. Misunderstood, adrift, she finds herself abandoned, not just by him, but by the promise she believed in. And so, once again, she slips into the cycle of escape, rejection, and searching for a new ideal to believe in. Marie-Louise von Franz captures the sorrow of this pattern with unsettling precision. The Puella remains emotionally youthful, still aching for someone or something to ease the emptiness within. Yet, external fulfillment never arrives, simply because it cannot, and in that absence, she gradually falls apart. The daydreams that once offered safety gradually constrict her, transforming comfort into confinement. The separation from the world, meant to shield her, ultimately leaves her alone. Over time, this archetype may grow increasingly self-focused, her attention circling her appearance, her image, her projected persona. She orbits around her own reflection, craving affirmation from every side. Others become mere spectators, expected only to echo her qualities back to her. The moment this expectation is unmet, her response is cold, distant, sometimes scornful. The sadness lies in how her search for validation pulls her further away from true connection, trapping her within the very fantasy she once fled to for solace. Self-obsession acts as a blindfold, rendering her oblivious to the pain swirling around her. Any display of empathy is a hollow performance, a calculated facade. She feigns sensitivity well, but her gaze always circles back to the ongoing turmoil within herself. A relentless inner spectacle, she magnifies with every glance, gesture, and whispered phrase. In this theater of shadows, she stars as both the tragic heroine and her only audience. The script never strays. She waits in twisted anticipation, weaves her spell, falls into inevitable despair, suffers in exquisite detail, yet remains trapped, static. One specter, in particular, haunts her sleepless nights time. The very notion of growing older is intolerable, since her only anchor is the fading specter of youth, a delicate magic that withers before her eyes. When the reflection shifts, betraying that innocence with lines and shadows, panic corrodes her carefully crafted illusions. She claws at what remains, cultivating a polished mask, offering rehearsed tenderness, chasing frantic diversions, yet the slow, crushing collapse draws inexorably closer, because the threat has never been the ticking clock, but the emptiness where true substance should have been. Without real foundations, time becomes a predator, and many are devoured. Sometimes, the refusal to grow consumes her entirely. Reality slips away, replaced by warped private worlds, where dreams mutate and human connection fades to ash. Longing takes the place of real action. Daily life turns suffocating, and the once enchantingly whimsical woman fades into seclusion, cut off in a gentle haze of psychosis, where communication with the outside disappears. leaving only repetition, an echo. Perhaps what hurts the most is this. She isn't evil, she's just lost. She built this fantasy world as a shield, but now she drags invisible chains through her days, projecting her pain and perpetuating toxic cycles. Never out of malice, but simply because she knows no alternative. A way where she stops living as the heroine in a fairy tale and starts writing her own story instead. Walking this path, though, requires something the poor archetype would never permit the choice to mature. That's where I want to focus next. Real transformation. Not easy, often painful, but truly freeing. There is a way out, but it means stepping through the looking glass. If this feels familiar, you'll discover real insight in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. Here's a slightly paraphrased version of your text. This work distills Jung's main concepts and offers practical tools for deeper self-understanding. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Escaping the poor eternus archetype isn't easy, and certainly not painless. It's often a harsh ordeal because it means facing head-on what this woman fears most: genuine change. Not just shifting surface-level things like her appearance or surroundings, but embracing profound internal transformation. Change that calls for surrender, that involves a symbolic death, that forces her to let go of the delicate and captivating persona she crafted as a shield so she can move forward and become fully herself, a woman. This kind of transformation doesn't happen by accident. It starts the moment she recognizes the repetition. The same patterns keep cycling: shallow relationships, decisions forever delayed, abandoned aspirations, and a lingering emptiness and sense of not being enough. Sooner or later, reality intrudes. Time asserts itself, and perhaps for the very first time, she looks in the mirror and sees past her own illusions. At this crossroads, Jung's concept of individuation emerges as a guide. Individuation is the journey towards true selfhood, not a mask worn for approval, but the emergence of a vital, coherent, conscious inner self. To move forward, she must stop running from herself, stop leaping from one shiny new beginning to another, and face the challenge of genuine growth. This process is painful. Growing up often means letting go of the safety of psychological childhood. Here comes the most sensitive aspect: the relationship with time. The poor is fearful of growing older because she links youth with freedom, beauty, and value. However, this is an illusion shaped by a culture that worships appearance while neglecting inner depth. Aging does not signify the loss of freedom. Rather, it marks the beginning of genuine freedom. True freedom begins only when a woman stops seeking external validation, performing charm, and relying on others' judgments, allowing her to live authentically. In this way, aging equates to maturing. Maturing involves learning to make choices, uphold them, and remain steadfast. It means moving from uncertainty to certainty. It means ceasing to wait for someone else to resolve her life, and instead taking responsibility for her own mind. It means leaving behind the victim mindset and becoming the author of her own story. Being a woman is not about being light and fleeting, but about being whole. Marie-Louise von Franz explains that true healing of the poor or Prula archetype begins when a person commits to something beyond their personal fantasies. Whether it is a job, a creative endeavor, a genuine relationship, or a spiritual journey, it doesn't matter. What matters is the commitment, a word that the eternal girl so often fears. Committing means planting your feet firmly on the ground and declaring, "I am here, I choose to be here, and I accept the consequences of that." Such a commitment demands a pause from constant motion. The woman must stop running away. She has to look at her own habits with a kind of relentless honesty. No dodging the truth. She has to watch herself fall into silence and ask quietly, "How much longer will I drift? For how long will I let my life be shaped by unseen forces, by the wants of others, by fortune's fickle touch?" She senses it's time to take the reins, though that doesn't mean closing herself off or numbing what's soft and gentle inside her. The girl in her doesn't need to vanish. Instead, she must gently make space for the part of her that is wise, steady, and grown. This is about seeing herself as a person in her own right, not just the subject of someone else's longing. She realizes that maturity isn't about becoming dull or ordinary. It's stopping the endless need for rescue, for approval. And yet, somehow, heartbreakingly, only when she gives up the search for perfect love does she become open to real love. Because at last, she's herself, fully seen, unguarded, genuine. But there's no final arrival. Even as the old dreams fall away, she has to search for a new self, something anchorless now asking to be rooted. And so she steps into the uncertain future. Uncertain, But asked to become whole at last, the demands are relentless. For a woman influenced by the pure Outrun archetype, these pressures don't come from the outside world. They rise up from her own depths. No matter how hard she tries to maintain lightness, allure, or the illusion of freedom, eventually something behind the mask starts to fracture. Emptiness creeps in, anxiety grows stronger, and a persistent question begins to haunt her. How long can I keep avoiding myself? Eventually, the eternal girl archetype loses its value. It no longer offers safety or fascination. Instead, it stifles and restricts, keeping her trapped in a cycle of enchantment, always waiting for the ideal moment, the perfect partner, or the opportunity that never truly arrives. It won't arrive because real life asks for presence, decisiveness, maturity, and the willingness to take responsibility. This is where individuation, the integration of the psyche Jung described, takes root. It starts when you choose to stop waiting and begin living. Maturing is revealed not as the loss of beauty, but as the dawn of depth. Not as the end of love, but as the foundation for true intimacy. Growing up doesn't kill freedom. It allows autonomy to flourish. Breaking free from the poor identity means relinquishing an old self that once shielded you, but now confines you. It's a fearless move toward authenticity. It feels like wandering through a desert of uncertainty, fear, and isolation, hoping to uncover some deeper truth buried within yourself. It means looking into the eyes of the woman you might become, and quietly agreeing, even if it hurts, the woman who survives this journey isn't flawless. She doesn't charm everybody. She no longer relies on empty hopes. Instead, she's whole. She moves through life on her own terms. She understands herself, stands by herself, and clings to her solitary journey. And this woman, unlike the one she used to be, doesn't sit around dreaming of a happy ending. She knows that happy endings are stories we tell children, and what she has left is to write her own story, one marked by hard-won honesty, and a courage that comes from knowing what's been lost. If you pause for a moment and look straight at your life, who do you see standing at the center? Is it you, or someone vanished in the background of their own existence? Have you noticed the ageless girl, always waiting for a rescue that never comes, forever hoping someone else will step in to save her? Or has she grown tired, ready to face what nobody else can face for her? Your own story. Do you feel like you're leading it, or just watching it happen? If this stirs something in you, discomfort, sadness, the recognition of an old pattern, write it out. Sometimes just saying it makes it real, and allows change, if only a little. And if this feeling isn't just yours, if you see it in someone close, if anything here strikes a nerve, don't let it disappear into silence. The road to awareness doesn't stop at understanding. It just lingers quietly in every decision that follows.